to. So why don't we start with you and let us know who is on the line and in your room.
Sure. I'm actually just at the desk on my own. So this is Ross Levi, Vice President Marketing Initiatives with I Love New York. But I did make it into the office, so that was a feat unto itself. So, but happy to join you, and other folks on the phone can introduce themselves.
I'm Betty Little.
Hi, Betty.
Irene Baker from Madison Square Garden.
Alana Petroselli.
Michael Johnson.
Natasha Caputo from Westchester County.
Dan Fuller from Bristol Mountain.
Someone who
Tom
probably
Mulroy.
is happy about the snow. Hi, Tom.
Yeah.
Nancy Elder with JetBlue.
John Mariacker representing Thurman Thomas.
Okay. Thurman Thomas.
Okay.
Okay, then I think that's probably it. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, or we'll go through our group here. So this is Christine Nicholas, the voice of TAC, right? Okay. Yeah.
Gail Grimmett, Delta Airlines.
Eleanor Tatum, New York Amsterdam News.
Mark Wilson, International Tourism for I Love New York.
Lizette Montero, Event Marketing for I Love New York.
Gavin Landry, I Love New York.
Jamie Clementi, I Love New York.
Lisa Soto, I Love New York.
Hannah Kaplan, ESD Digital.
Ben Gutman, Digital Natives with the I Love New York app.
John Ernst, TAC member.
Alexander Stanton, Empire Global Ventures.
Rich Newman, ESD Marketing.
Rowena Sahuli, I Love New York.
Melanie Klausner, Finn Partners.
Hi, I'm Howard Zemsky, incoming president of ESD, but I also love New York. Leave it at that. Looking forward to get to know everybody and working together, and thanks for having me today.
And Mehul Patel, Chief of Staff here at ESD. Definitely, I love New York as well. I'm here on behalf of Kenneth, who is delayed by the weather, but he hopes to definitely stop by at some point before the meeting ends. So he apologizes that he can't be here at the moment, but is excited to have the group here as well, and of course Howard. So thanks.
How about our staff or others guests?
Oh, my name is Thomas Helsinski. I'm with CCM, Creative Content Management. We are marketing PR agency here in New York.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Patty Orns with Delta Airlines.
Stacia Zarka, International Marketing with I Love New York.
George Lentz, Nicholas and Lentz Communications.
Jasmine Baker, Public Affairs, CSE.
Ken Wong, I Love New York.
Hi, I'm Ying Su. I'm with I Love New York.
All right, terrific. So welcome. And Ken, is this your first meeting from having the baby?
Yes.
So let's welcome back Ken. Congratulations. You should have all received a copy of the minutes. So I would like I want to know if there are any changes that need to be. How about a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Alexander Stanton as second.
Second.
John Ernst, second. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Minutes are approved. We have exciting times here with the new year. A couple of changes in the administration. So, Mehul, we appreciate you being here for Kenneth. We do want to formally thank him because he has really been terrific as far as supporting everything we do here at the TAC and I Love New York, and it's really been wonderful. The governor has also, appointed somebody who I have had a chance to meet a little bit through my work with the RADC and traveling around the state, and I know that you are also very passionate about I Love New York and tourism. So Howard, we are so happy to welcome you, and we would love for you to give us some remarks and tell us what maybe some of your goals will be for us to be doing under your leadership. So first of all, let's welcome Howard.
The is mine?
The floor is yours,
Oh,
Mr. Chairman.
okay, well, I don't really have any prepared remarks as such, but let me just say, I'm a kid from Long Island, Brooklyn and Long Island. I've lived in Buffalo for 33 years. We also have an apartment in New York City. I think of New York City as home as well. I apologize, first of all, for bringing Buffalo with me this morning. I had the opportunity to chair the Martin House Restoration Corporation for 5 years, so thank you for putting an image of it on the wall today. You know, we are blessed with amazing assets across New York State. Tourism has been a huge part of the economy in Western New York. I've had the opportunity to co-chair the Western New York Regional Economic Development Council recently, and the Governor's Buffalo Billion Initiative, and so you're all familiar with the fact that we've put a big emphasis on tourism as sort of one of the 3 sectors we're really focused on. And I even had the opportunity last year to take part in some of these governor challenges that highlight tourism. Half our boat went into the water in the Adirondacks. So I realize the value of tourism regionally and statewide. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to supporting all of your efforts and initiatives on tourism. And it's a huge part of the economy, and it's one of the most fun things to be involved with. All the things you're going to be involved with. It's interesting and it's exciting, and it's so it's great to be here. And you know, I'm looking forward to being your partner in advancing tourism in New York.
Terrific. Thank you. Mayhill, do you have anything to?
All I would say is just one, there's no way I could actually, replicate what Kenneth would say in this moment, as you can all imagine, having been here before. Again, Kenneth will definitely want to try to stop by when he gets here. I think what Kenneth would definitely say is you have an incredible friend in tourism in Howard. Howard has been working with the governor and Western New York and all of us here in economic development for the past 4 years. He's the co-chair of our Western New York Regional Economic Development Council. He's done a tremendous amount of great work in Buffalo and the Western New York region, which is a telling testament to why he's being asked to be in the position that he's going to be taking on. And we couldn't be more thrilled here at ESD to have a great leader to follow Kenneth. And while we're going to miss Kenneth, and I know all of us will congratulate him on his new role at Tax and Finance, we're equally thrilled to have Howard come in, and I know that all of you will be giving him all sorts of great advice and guidance along the way. So we thank you for that too.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as far as my report, I'll begin with the vacancy update. At the end of our last meeting, I announced the resignation of John Segendorf, which left us with 4 vacancies. Nancy Elder from JetBlue was then appointed, bringing our vacancy number to 3. Today we can welcome yet another new member, which brings our vacancy number down to 2. I'm not sure if Spike is on the line, but we want to welcome Spike Herzig, who was recommended for appointment to the TAC by Assembly Minority Leader Brian Kolb. Spike has founded several nonprofit ventures to help grow cultural heritage-based destinations, from private sector consulting for the country of Mexico to running a major regional DMO. He served as head of the Finger Lakes Tourism Alliance, High Adventure Tours in Syracuse, and runs his own tourism consulting group, THG, which specializes in experience marketing, imaginative tour package creation, and private sector tourism development. Spike, we've had the opportunity to work with Spike this year. He helped co-host a cultural tourism meeting that Gavin attended. So we thank Spike for being part of the TAC. And Spike, I think you may have joined us on the phone. No? Okay. I did get an email from him this morning because he was actually attempting to try to fly here, at 6:30, and he was told flights would be rerouted. So he's probably driving right now. So maybe we'll hear from him in a little while. So now I pass the meeting over to Gavin Landry, our Executive Director, who will give us his report. Gavin?
Thanks, Christine, and good morning, everyone, and welcome, Howard. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to ESD. I can't echo enough what Mayhill had to say about our excitement to have you, and thank Kenneth for his support. So I didn't realize Mr. Newman was going to be here, so I'll be in some ways speaking for him at the moment. But you know, when it comes to our winter campaign, which is actively in market at the moment, you can see down at home, which is what is on the walls. This is now gracing the subways and the buses and so on and so forth. Many of our assets throughout New York City, and in our continued effort to increase consideration and perception of New York State as a great place to not only visit but live and work. And so in this case, we wanted to make sure that we were able to show you the commercials that are in market, and I think we'll start with that. So listen.
Pajamo, and I love New York. Why? I'll tell you why. Because every winter, my favorite thing to do is ski upstate. In New York, you can ski more and drive less. With over 50 ski resorts throughout the state, great skiing is always nearby. With some of the highest snowfall in the U.S., it's there on the slopes. Day or night, green circle or black diamond for the experts like me. It's for everyone. So plan your next New York ski trip at iloveny.com/winter. This winter, experience something new in New York State. From the exciting slopes of Catamount, soothing spa to Helium Fun Resort, to hours of fun exploring the Strong, Nation's Museum of Play. You can find something for everyone with the I Love New York app. So plan your winter getaway at iloveny.com/winter or with the I Love New York app and see what's next.
Right, so you may have noticed the first commercial was actually a celebrity endorsement. We've been using that format now for some time, and I was saying to Maypool just a minute ago, with the governor's support of tourism and the consistency of support for tourism, it has really allowed us to have a broad range of assets featured and has been raising consideration and awareness and perception. And we know that because we actually implemented Mr. Newman and his good thinking about the strategy of the state marketing. We decided to implement a tracking study where it showed how we are actually raising that perception consideration and realizing that other states across the country, like California, Florida, Illinois, and others who have been in market longer and with more consistency, we are starting to gain back that ground that we may have lost. So that is very positive. We are actually teeing up right now, looking at the lines of interest for summer that drive the highest amount of economic impact and room nights. We are also looking at the continuation of the celebrity campaign for the summer tourism, because as you know from the governor's state of the state that there is yet another year of support for tourism and recognition of tourism as a major economic driver for ESD.
Gavin,
Yes.
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When we put these ads on bus lines and subway lines,
Yes.
how do we select which lines they go on?
So we work with the MTA and the Port Authority very closely, and it sometimes is budget driven. At other times it's trying to obtain as much share of voice as possible. In this case, the out of home I think was on roughly a quarter of all trains in service across all lines, including LIRR as well as the Metro North. So that gives us pretty good reach, so to speak. But in the summer of last year, we may have had even more. I think we may have had up to a half of all trains in service. So it really was. It started out, Alexandra, as remnant space that the MTA and Port Authority gave over to us,
right,
and space that had not been sold before. And then we started committing dollars to the space because we realized that the remnant space was really not getting it done. It was, at the end of the walk in the subway, station or what have you, and folks were just not, we weren't doing what we were trying to do, which is to increase their consideration and awareness, and so therefore we started taking paid positions. But to have a quarter of the trains and the buses and so on and so forth is, we feel, a pretty good, representation.
I'm just curious as to which lines, because you've got a certain density of families, not, in certain areas of this city. I travel the 2, 3, and the 4, 5, 6. I haven't seen them.
Is that right?
And so I'm just wondering, I go Tribeca or, Financial District up to Upper East and Upper West, and they're great looking. And I see a lot of ads for dentists and, personal injury lawyers, and, New York Institute of Technology, but these are great. But I'm just wondering, if we're paying now, we ought to be hitting certain income areas, certain density areas with young families, right? I mean, we just ought to be strategic. I'm just curious if there's a way to get a report as to what lines we're hitting.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
That'd be great.
Absolutely. And maybe we can think about it together, too.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else on the winter campaign? I'm happy to field questions, or Rich, while he's here, I know you've got an 11:30. Okay. Next topic under my report is the state of the state. I think for those of you that saw the state of the state, the governor was really very passionate about a number of things, and we were delighted that tourism was a big part of what he had to say on the state of the state. In fact, the way that the governor approached the state of the state this year was quite meaningful, and he really showed the numbers, which when you look at it, I think he talked about $100 million that's been invested in tourism in his first 4 years, and it has kicked off an $8.6 billion increase in tourism. That's a pretty good return on investment no matter what business you're in. He also talked about the number of jobs, which last year crested over 900,000 for 3 months, and seasonally adjusted was 858,000 jobs. So this is a strong employer for New York State. 1 out of every 12 jobs in New York State is dependent upon tourism, and we don't get, or I should say, we don't credit ourselves with 100% of the airline jobs, 100% of the restaurant jobs, 100% of the retail jobs. We only take a piece of those, and we all know that a large number of those jobs are created by tourism. And in fact, some regions, we got a study back recently that showed that every region in New York State minimally accounts for tourism for 40% of its employment, and some up to 70% of its employment. So the Adirondacks, for instance, 70% of its employment. And I know Senator Little is on the line, so she'll second that for me. But really was very helpful to see the governor reflect it that way. And lastly, the spending, which we projected $62 billion in direct spending. If you take the induced and indirect benefits, $100 billion tourism created for New York State last year. These are significant numbers, and it puts us on par at 227 million visitors. Puts us on par with any other state. I think California advertised itself around 200 million. I think Florida advertised itself a little over 100 million. So just contextualizing what these efforts have done and how they're really paying off for New York State. So we were delighted to hear about that. We are actively putting together our plans for 2015. As you know, we're on a fiscal that ends in March, and so you know, we're actually in our 4th quarter. Lizette reminds me all the time when I say first quarter. She says, no, 4th quarter. So we are actively putting together our plans and look forward to sharing and thinking about those plans with you as we go forward.
Gavin,
yes.
one more question. Do we know what areas of the state, if we're at 227 million, do we know over last year what areas of the state have grown the most?
Yeah, and that's something I can happily provide you just in terms of sort of the back of the envelope. You're looking at around 8.5 million increased visitors in New York State. New York City advertised a couple of million increased visitors, so it tends to be about a 60-40, New York City versus the rest of the state. The state was ahead of national average in terms of occupancy, as well as RevPAR, which is ultimately the number that we all care about, available room. There are roughly 100,000, now maybe 110,000 rooms in New York City, equally in the rest of New York State, 100,000 guest rooms. So that kind of gives you a context. Obviously, New York City is able to command a higher rate than upstate New York, but we're seeing that the rate of increase in hotel rooms sold upstate was greater than the increase in hotel rooms sold in New York City. So that's something that we feel very good about, is that upstate actually eclipsed New York City in terms of growth and rooms sold versus New York City, obviously at a different rate, and so therefore at a different RevPAR level.
And do we know outside of New York, I mean, I'm assuming it's not just outside the 5 boroughs, it's considered all of upstate. So do we know the breakdowns? I bet the committee would really enjoy knowing what those breakdowns are, not because we should then drive dollars only to the highest performing, but then we know how to drill down on the lower performing, right? So that would be interesting.
Yeah, we did every year we do a report with tourism economics, and it breaks down by, in fact by county, but by region, so I'll get you all the information. Be happy to. And sorry for not sharing it in advance, I think that's really important.
And Gavin,
yes.
I'm going to sorry to interrupt. I'm going to steal Howard away, unfortunately, for another
great.
meeting. But thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thanks.
Look forward to working with you.
Well, said I had to go before I said something embarrassing. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. Looking forward to working together. See ya.
I think Rich has to leave as well.
Excuse me, too. I apologize.
No worries.
I'll bring it back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Lastly, on my report, Ross and I prepared testimony for the Assembly. We were to testify last Tuesday, I think it was, and that was, of course, right around the storm that hit New York City. and so, or the state really. And so the Assembly asked us to submit our testimony as opposed to giving it in person, but we are also preparing Kenneth's testimony for the Assembly, which I believe is coming up soon. Ross, you may know the date.
No, I don't know the specific date, but I know in general and I'm not even sure it's been set, but we're getting ready for the various budget hearings that Kenneth's going to be participating in.
Right. So I think those were all very good. We did the same thing last year, but really appreciate both the Senate and the Assembly support of tourism. Both have active tourism committees, and Assemblywoman Markey and Senator Little could not be more supportive of our efforts, and we're so grateful for that. So that was the last part of my report, unless there are any other questions.
Any questions? Okay, Gavin, thank you very much. We now are going to move on to the subcommittee reports, and I'm pleased to report that all three of our subcommittees have met. So they're going to give us an update. Ross Levi really handles from a staff side, making sure that these meetings take place. Most of them have been done by conference call. We've been on them. So Ross, thank you. And I think Dan is on the line. But before we hand it off to Dan, Ross, if you want to add how the committees have been functioning, feel free.
Sure. Thanks so much. Thanks very much to the chairs and the members of the subcommittees. There's been a lot of great work that's going on, and I know we're all really busy, and so we really appreciate everyone taking the extra time to do what these subcommittees are designed to do, which is to do a little bit of a deeper dig down on a couple of topic areas, so that we can hopefully have some, a better look and review of where things are in New York State on these issues, and leading to some recommendations and next steps about what the state might do better to support them. So for example, the first committee we're going to hear from is the hospitality infrastructure. It was charged with trying to take a look at exploring ways of encouraging owners to invest in new lodging infrastructure in under-resourced areas of the state, to look at the possibility of renovating and upgrading existing facilities to benefit New York's tourism industry, or new growth, new sort of infrastructure, and specifically to propose program ideas and specific target areas for improvements and new developments. So there's been some great research and discussions that have gone on already. I think there's a committee that's met the most so far. Not that it's a contest, but it's done some great work. Jan Chesterton sent her regrets earlier today for unforeseen reasons. She wasn't able to join us. She was planning to give the report, but committee member Dan Fuller has eagerly and thankfully offered to pitch in and give the update for the committee. So Dan, I hand it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, and welcome everybody this morning. First, I just want to mention that our last meeting was on December 19th, and Jan, our chair, led the meeting along with Michael Johnson, John Ernst, Tom Mulroy, and myself that was present. And we reviewed the results of the whole hotel brand interviews that were done by Michael. And Michael, thank you so much for conducting all those interviews, as it was extremely helpful. And we discussed the issues that kind of surround the economic viability of hotel development in New York State. And some of the comments that were reflected, the perspective of national and international hotel developers, showed that there are really no blanket solutions but there are targeted opportunities, which include revitalizing current inventory, looking at mixed-use facilities to address the seasonality issues of upstate, nicely appointed upscale hotel brands such as the Hilton Garden Inn and Courtyard Marriott, boutique hotels that can often reflect and complement the area more than really the traditional branded hotels. And also luxury hotels, and certainly the Hamptons are an example of the success of luxury hotel development that does increase visitation. And I think many of the comments that were given by those folks is really that upstate becomes a little bit more difficult of an issue, but certainly downstate they're very, very encouraged about, and in New York. We also talked about possibly looking and suggesting that there might be larger disbursements of state funding that might be more productive for some of the development projects. And as you know, a lot of the state funding is currently distributed over several amounts that are likely and relatively small for large development projects. And the comment was made, for instance, if you've got maybe a $10 or $15 million development of projects, $200,000 or $300,000 might not necessarily make that project go. And we thought it might be more effective to really look at targeting a smaller strategic selection of areas and issue larger disbursements to those areas. And the question that we have at some point is we're wondering whether the disbursements can be changed going forward. So really, what do some of the success projects look like? Our subcommittee can look at the 3 or 4 highest destinations and look at why people stay at those hotels. What are the keys to getting, Auburn or Saranac or the Niagara Hotel projects completed? And we also noted that the Hotel Syracuse just declared a convention status, received the largest CFA award last year. And we're currently looking into what makes some of the models work, the public-private partnerships on funding, obviously resorts with casinos, and certainly lodging that's currently connected to convention centers. So from there, we talked about what are the needs in the various areas of the region and the state, the areas with largest numbers of visitors for tourism, what are the natural strengths of the region, and is there infrastructure? Is there sufficient sewer or road infrastructure? For instance, a $15 million burden can be added to some of the projects. And really, we're starting to look at maybe 5 or 6 pockets and really start to study those areas more in detail. And some of those might be, ski areas such as Whiteface, looking at some of the amenities and can we leverage that amenity to build a hotel. The Hudson Valley and the CIA and Marist College areas, and it was mentioned that it was 150 weddings a year that are turned down because there's not sufficient lodging. And maybe look at Plattsburgh a little bit more in depth because the airport is frequently used by Canadians to fly to Florida as opposed to a way to facilitate additional stays in the Adirondacks. Other areas that would be well suited for pilot projects for public-private partnerships, and can we streamline and centralize some of the projects? And some of the comments were made that some of the results taken a few years ago, it takes so long to get some of these projects approved, and really what can we do to help make that process a little bit quicker and a little bit more efficient? And maybe just by perhaps creating a point person or an advocate for that project really to help and assist the developers. And really looking at the possibility of tourism opportunity zones that would help for capital funds or low-cost financing. The committee also looked at a handful of achievable goals to result in a memo outlining changes and opportunities and recommendations. And we want to study success areas to see what has worked, identify regions and needs that are ripe for development, identify areas to streamline the hotel development and process or offer state incentives, and also suggest state support around infrastructure to make areas ready for hotel development. And also suggest maybe an identified advocate from the state to assist with some of these developers. So I know there's a lot of material. We spent probably an hour and a half on the phone discussing those, and I know we're going to probably have a follow-up meeting within the next 30 days to continue this process. Does anybody on the committee have any additional comments?
This is Michael in Ithaca. That was a very good summary. I'll just add, a couple other, specific examples we talked about. Underscored a couple of the ideas that came up. One was, the tying, as far as the state being able to do things, tying these to urban development projects. President Starwood was emphasizing how important that was in the Syracuse Inlet project. There's 2 brand new. They're not high-end hotels, but they're very good new brands. I think an Aloft and an Element by Starwood that is going into the Inlet project. But very critical to the success of that is its connection to being an urban development project, and not just having residential, but also office, commercial that will drive some of the business traffic to those hotels. I think the other interesting one, which we, if we would like to, we could get more follow-up information on, and that is the notion of state investment in conference facilities. A good case study was actually in the state of Pennsylvania in Erie, where it's not quote-unquote luxury, but it's a full-service Sheraton that was put in there, and it's connected by a catwalk, directly to the state's investment in conference facilities there. And that the same fellow said, well, that hotel wouldn't work at all without that connection, without the involvement by the state. And he said we could get more details on that case if we needed them.
This is Betty Little. On a couple of the places you mentioned, certainly Plattsburgh and the Adirondacks, one of the biggest problems is that a lot of our lodging are old motels, little cabins, things like that. And if we could even get people to be able to get some private financing, borrowing, or some way that they could improve on those. Because today people want more of the amenities and the nicer places and the hotels with the pools and everything that goes with it. So we have another big area of need in Blue Mountain Lake where they have the Adirondack Museum, and there's really very little lodging any place near there. They're looking for private partnership to do something, and a conference center there would be unbelievably good. But the other problem we have in the North Country is a lot of our attractions are seasonal. So to have a really good hotel, you've got to make sure you have a year-round base for it. But I think any attention that we can get on this would be very important.
Yeah, I think, Dan, you did a great job summarizing it. I try to categorize it into three main ideas that I think summarize everything. One was, as Dan mentioned, but I'm just summarizing, is the ability to take have the $700+ million being distributed around in $300,000, $400,000 increments. Some are over a little over $1 million. But as you mentioned, to have a $50 million project, $30 million project, $80 million project up there, a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $100,000, or even $1 million project doesn't add a lot of value. Whereas maybe you take out of the $700+ million, you would allocate one a year of $50 million or $25 million, then two a year of $25 million, and then maybe $10 million, and then the rest could be scattered around at $300,000 or $400,000 a year. That would be a big impact statement instead of $1 million here or $500,000 here. That was sort of the first one. Second one is if there's a developer or an owner or a company that wants to redo an existing hotel or build a new hotel, we feel that, we discussed, I shouldn't say we feel that there should be some state sort of centralized advocate that would push that project, because there's many different agencies that are out there, and it's very cumbersome and very sporadic where you put this all together. And there's one, if we can have, if someone's going to commit to spending that kind of money of $50 million+ on a project, there should be one dedicated New York State advocate that will work at all avenues of the state to get that through. And obviously it has to be committed of a number and bigger, 25, 50 million or whatever and bigger. And I think was discussed also as forming some type of state tax credit to encourage a half dozen or a dozen so New York State banks to form a lending fund. And this was just brought up recently. I don't know if Dan mentioned this, but it was brought up by the other whoever else just talked, that there could be a fund put together by New York State banks that would lend up to a certain amount, 65, 70%. And there'd be a form that if they ever lost money on that particular deal, obviously they have to blow through the 35% plus equity, then there'd be some type of state tax credits to that funding group, but it encourages them on a pretty riskless basis to invest and lend money in targeted areas. Those are the three main ones, obviously, and then Ben mentioned there should be targeted pilot programs in 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 locations that are high volume in tourists, and whether they're event driven or geographic driven, that we should pick. It shouldn't just be a blanket. We should pick the most likely, whether it's Niagara, or Adirondacks, or Hudson Valley. Pick an area or 5 areas and target them, and then apply these 3 items to it. So I think that summarizes, I think, them in those 3 items.
Christine, how do we address the issue of, let's say, infrastructure and wireless and telecommunications. I mean, I know twice in the past year I've driven through the Adirondacks, calls dropped, and the minute that happens, it ceases to be charming and it's simply annoying.
Well,
And
thank
if we're
you,
gonna put
thank you,
real
thank you,
hotels,
thank you.
It's got to be really, I mean, done to a, if this is for business conferences, and also when you step outside a facility to take a private, it can't just go down, right?
It's no longer charming as they used to.
At all.
When I say used to, I mean as of last year in the Catskills. That's how the owner of, what was that hotel, George? What was the so-called luxury hotel, but he only had Wi-Fi in the hotel, and then when you go into the parking lot,
Take a break from your.
it would break, yeah. So he's like, well, that's what people want. No. And Betty, you know.
Yeah, it's terrible in the Adirondacks, and we've worked on it, and you know, we've made progress, but we have an Adirondack Park agency that really doesn't want to see things very tall. An 85-foot cell tower at Paul Smith College with 1,000 students, so plenty of people to use it. The only thing they allowed was a 65-foot tower, and the more people use it, the weaker the signal is. It's ridiculous. It's getting better, but it has a long ways to go. And to get all these second home owners to stay and spend a 4-day weekend or an extra week during the summer or winter or whatever, we have to have broadband and cell coverage. And we're working on it, but it's a slow process, and I hope we survive long enough to have it happen.
If we change the conversation and make it a public safety issue.
It is a public safety issue.
Right, I know that, but right now
Nice
we're
idea.
talking about it from the tourism perspective. But if we push it as a public safety issue, it might get some more traction, because I know the rangers, the park rangers use cell phone signals to help track people and stuff
Good
like
idea.
that. And so it may,
Yeah,
changing that.
just last
do that.
week they saved a hiker and were able to find him by his cell phone.
Yep.
And
Right, exactly. So if we change that conversation, it may be a way to get the parks to say, okay, yes, we will put these cell towers in places, even though they may be ugly, but we will put them up because it's a public safety issue.
Also
But
push it-
actually, Senator Little was instrumental in getting cell towers along the Northway, where there was a...
well, we still have a
incident.
gap between exits 30 and 31,
Well,
and
that
it's
is-
an
that is
international
covered.
highway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the APA rule is the towers have to be invisible, invisible,
Right.
and
So,
that's not going away.
well, let me just ask,
No
because
such thing.
Gavin, we were both
Right.
at the State of the State. Betty, you were at the State of the State.
Yes.
The governor did announce, and I was very pleased, but I don't know the details, but he announced that they were going to be focusing on broadband,
Right.
for
It's
upstate.
I actually went to one of the announcements before the budget, and it's a $500,000 with a $500 million, I'm sorry, of state money to be matched by $500 million of private money from the carriers and whatever for broadband throughout the state. And certainly our problem is getting the carriers, to feel that in this rural, remote, seasonal area, even though they do get a lot of business from it, that there's enough. It's a lot easier for them to go to more metropolitan areas, although they've gotten better, the APA has gotten better, but it's still terrible.
But Eleanor's idea could take this out of an ops budget and put it onto a state troopers or public safety budget, which is going to be
That's
deeper
good.
and probably not have as many requirements on it.
Yeah, I hope
That's a great
And be
idea.
able to do an end run around some of the height requirements, because there's no way to get a $50 million project up there if there's bad coverage, right? It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Right. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
We will certainly make that recommendation, and it's a shame that, Howard left for this part of it, because I think we're going to make that his top priority unless something else comes up in the meeting. But I think we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's what will, make the development
Well,
much
when my
more,
son, one of my sons, the last one to get married a couple of years ago, was looking for a venue for the reception, and it was right near Lake George, and I said, "This is really nice." He said, "Mom, their cell phone coverage is lousy. I can't have it here." So it affects the economy as well as the health and safety. But I think safety is probably, we're proving that we have been able to rescue people who have gotten lost or had an accident. This guy broke a leg on a fall or something like that. They were able to know where he was. He, was able to call. They got him out.
Betty, what committee would oversee public safety, and who would be the chair of that?
Energy. And our tourism,
Energy?
On the Senate side. I think the Energy Committee takes care of the public safety. It's energy and utilities and that kind of thing.
Could you encourage your colleagues, and we can also talk to Assemblywoman Markey, that maybe they could ask for hearings,
right,
which could help with
well, they don't even want more cell cover towers in New York City or Long Island. We have opposite bills. I'm looking for them. They're trying to keep them from happening. So, because they have enough. So yeah, let me look at that. I can do that. I think it's a tourism, health, and energy, health and safety thing.
We should also solicit testimony from the troopers. I'd like to know where they experience a lack of coverage, right?
Yeah, we have those phones
the
along
troopers
the Northway.
and fire and police experience a lack of coverage. Let them tell us. If we even start by backfilling to their needs, who's going to go up against them?
Well, they have little computers, in their cars. But if they're in an area where they don't have cell coverage, they can't use those to see, check a license plate as to see who this car might be or who might be in it or what kind of, danger they might be walking towards. So there's a lot to it, and I think the environmental argument is really getting very, very weak, and so we might be able to do something.
Okay. Well, you have the committee's support on that.
Well,
so
that's important. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the Hospitality and Infrastructure Committee? So we will move then to...
Yeah,
Yes?
This is Dan. I think that pretty much concludes our report, but certainly the comments that the Senator had, maybe we should just continue to carry that kind of as an agenda item going forward.
We'll add it, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Aviation and Transportation. Gail?
Yep.
Ross may want to intro.
Ross, do you want an intro?
Yeah, sure. This group met, as well as actually a very big group that met via the phone, and really was kind of a who's who of the transportation infrastructure of New York State, from everything from aviation to rail to bus and lots of other things. It was a really great group, and the charge of that committee was about taking a look at how to promote airline and other forms of travel to New York State destinations, recognizing that being able to get to places in New York State is a real, obviously a key to tourism success, and also a real challenge in a state like ours. And the committee's objective was to, take a look, are there specific promotional programs or airport enhancements or other travel incentives that might be recommended from our group that could help further the goal of a better, bigger, stronger tourism infrastructure. And it was all headed up quite ably, no surprise, by Gail Grimmett, and so I'll hand it over to Gail for the update for this committee.
Okay, thank you. We had quite a robust conversation, to Ross's point on the phone. From the TAC perspective, just to let you know who joined us for the call, Christine was there, and myself, Alexandra was on the call, Nancy Elder, Senator Little, and JetBlue were all on the call from a TAC member perspective. And then, were you on there? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, and Eleanor was on there. Sorry. And then from industry representatives as well, we had Albany Airport, Doug Myers was on the phone, Buffalo Airport, Pascal Cohn was on the phone, Ralph Tregali was on the phone from the Port Authority, Jennifer Hanrahan from Rochester, Robert Schaefer from MacArthur. I think poor Robert felt a little left out. Chuck Rodanier from the MTA, Deb Sanderson from Amtrak, Mike Elvich from Coach USA, and George Lentz from Nicholas and Lentz Communications. And then Gavin and Ross and Lisa. So quite a large group.
It was a very large group.
It was a large group, and there was significant conversation that I think, I think the first takeaway is really figuring out how not to take on too much, and figuring out what we can take on and in what priority. We started at first talking really about international visitors. There was a lot of discussion about the Canadian border and that we have a lot of Canadians that are traveling via New York State airports to go to other destinations, but yet not staying in New York State as they're traveling through the airports. We talked about the megabus in terms of an option to offer transfers from the airports to destinations. We talked about Brand USA incentives and can they be used to attract Canadians again. The JOLT Act, we talked a lot about that because that was in Congress. It's been refiled in the new Congress. It has not yet passed, but it really talks about it really helps modernize and expand the visa waiver program. It helps reduce visa wait times. It helps to expand the global entry program. So there are things that are going through federally that could help us along the way as well. And then we also really talked about how can we leverage, and is there a way to leverage NYC and Company? They have 18 contractors in different countries already. That is there a way that we can tack on to them in terms of options and opportunities to promote New York broadly, and in addition to what NYC and Company has as their motives. We then started talking about gaps in infrastructure, and that's where, the conversation was so robust on that part, and it was really talking about, and this will be our first takeaway, is do we have the right type of transportation and proper infrastructure, and how do we promote that? Because I think, everyone from each of the different destinations had their own thoughts about what they had and what they didn't have, and some sort of gap analysis was one of the first takeaways that really I think is important for us to take out of and get to really what does each destination have? How many seats a day does it have coming in from an aviation perspective? How many seats a day does it have it coming in from a train perspective? Just to get an understanding, but then also the gap of what do you do once you get there? Once you arrive on Amtrak, or once you arrive at the airport, where do you go from there? Are there rental cars available? How do you get around to where you're going? How do you know where to go along those lines? So there was a big discussion about infrastructure on that end. Is the road infrastructure good? Senator Little brought up, as well, the whole conversation about the cell phone service and the ability to have GPS or cell phone service isn't broadly available across all of the places where, from a destination perspective, we're trying to attract individuals. I think we talked a lot about the gap between Long Island and the rest of New York State, and how do we find ways to even from intra-New York to try to get more focus as well, not just on external visitors, but also from our own New York visitors. How do we get people to get within the different regions and connect accordingly across the way? We talked about potential solutions. One is right off the bat, really conducting a situation analysis to look at what gaps exist where, because each destination is going to be different. And we need to understand where those gaps are and where they're most prevalent. Also understanding, making sure, quite frankly, that ilovenewyork.com has all of the connection information, itineraries, menus to narrow down options of what you're interested in doing, and how do you get for somebody who's looking to go but doesn't know what do I do once I get to the airport, to make sure all of that information is on there. We talked about creating widgets on airport websites that show how people can get to local destinations. We talked about the megabus, placing info and confirmations on their landing page. We talked about any kind of promotions or target marketing in other cities that are needed. And so I think as we went through what do we need to do, I think the first thing we need to do is really, one, set achievable timelines, and two, figure out what we can take on and what perhaps we need others to look at, or we need to help others focus on as well. And I think from the first piece of it is figuring out what we should take on, and is it smarter to divide up into some subgroups to at least start some of the situation analysis for the data gathering piece of it. Let us understand what each region has so we can sit down collectively and figure out what's missing the most from each region across the board. Also figuring out, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about international and domestic visitors, but understanding where right now the current visitors are coming from, so that we get a good understanding of which area is attracting what visitors at its current point along the way. Also understanding really what can New York State do versus what can the rest of the industry do, and what are other states doing, looking at what other states are doing in order to attract people to their destinations as well. What opportunities exist for a car, rail, and train. That goes back to the situational analysis. And then we talked about offering incentives to cell phone companies, but I think the previous conversation that we just had really is kind of a really smart way to go in terms of trying to get attention to it across the board. And are there enough airports getting the right flights and enough seats year round? And so for us, the next step is really to come up with our various subcommittee roles and understanding, or goals, and figuring out what we want to accomplish from a committee standpoint, figuring out what each region has in terms of outlining its gaps and possible options for us to take a look at, and then once we figure out what is already there, figuring out how to leverage it and market it accordingly. And so that really is kind of our next step. It was a great conversation, and everybody had a lot of passion, and it was an incredibly robust conversation, and I think now it's paring it all down into chunks that we know that we can handle and take on, and then move forward in understanding what already exists and where do we need to go, and what's achievable versus maybe putting a, for lack of a better word, a parking lot list of things that we think needs to get done, but really is outside either the subcommittee's purview of responsibilities and or quite frankly what's outside the purview of the tax responsibilities that we might need other people to look at. Mm-hmm. Did I miss anything?
I think I was really thorough. The one thing I want to add is that NYC&Co has now come out with its revised list of the countries sending the most foreign visitors to the area. Right. China's now jumped to 4, and we had a conversation about visa requiring countries and non. They've skyrocketed, and I think they're not the only ones. So maybe as we revisit this scale and do a drill down on tasks, let's try to fold in that new list.
Yeah,
because
we have a very good understanding of who's coming into New York City. I think what on the call what we're struggling with is who's coming into Syracuse, who's coming into Buffalo, who's coming into Niagara. Like we know that the Chinese visitors are now one of the number one markets for Corning, Museum of Glass, and Niagara, and they're getting there by bus traditionally, but now they're flying as well as. Because this is market driven. We have to allow the private market to really, they understand it a lot better than we do. So, but we have to drill down and, Gavin, I know we have some research going on about who, or we have had, like, what are they willing to do and how do you get them to travel? So since it's transportation, is it when they're at WTM or ITV, are they buying their flight and their bus? Or their flight and their rail all together right there, or are they waiting, and how much of a market is there when they get here? Do they have 48 hours or, extra time that we can then pull them up? So, that seems to be a little bit of what,
But there's the struggle. There's also, the DOT Form 41 data, we can pull who is directly going into what origin is directly going, forget about New York City, bypassing New York City, but what origins are directly going into Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, from a whole perspective. We can't, it's hard to get down below that data and the DOT data in terms of how long do they stay and what are they doing and that sorts of things. But there is data out there that can show where the most visitors are coming from, domestically and internationally via the DOT Form 41 data that can be pulled very easily to take a look at as well.
I think we should have a conversation with NYC&Co. and have a conversation with their contractors in China. They know. And they'll be able to tell us when folks go book that, because if it's visa requiring, there's no just extending a few extra days, right? So they know when they're coming in, Are they, we should get this from them, because they've got the contractors, I think, in 3 cities in China. Let's have a conversation with their people and find out, are they booking only flights and then they kind of mush around when they're here? Or in one-stop shop, are they booking X, Y, and Z? And if so, that's going to tell us there's going to have to be more marketing outreach to the foreign contractors, at least in China, or anywhere it's visa requiring.
Well, and you don't even need to go to China for that. I mean, you could go to the tour operators here that, like JTB, that's here, can even give you that information, whether it's JTB for Japan or any of the tour consolidators that are here, that are representing the Chinese agencies that are selling here in New York to go over to China. It works both ways, but JTB is present here in, for example, here in New York, and they're present there in Japan and Narita, let's say. So they can give you that information. We can have those conversations here. We can just go to the tour operators and go visit for a day and sit down and talk to them about what they're seeing in the travel and how are they selling the packages.
Right, but I think it's also interesting that if we look at if it's actual tour groups that are doing this
So
whole
that's
thing
the issue.
versus individuals that
Right.
are going and doing
Right.
their own exploring.
Right, because by the
their
time
state.
they're JTB, they've made a decision. And the question is, before that happens, right, so if NYC & Co. has employees literally in China, somewhere along the lines, the decision either is to go through a package, a JTB, or just get your business class flights and you'll handle it on the ground. I'm curious, is it 40-60, 70-30?
Well, and that's what I'm
Interesting
saying,
to know.
80% of the coach traffic going to and from Tokyo is through a consolidator.
Interesting.
Like there is, so there is,
Interesting.
so it depends by region
Right.
what it is.
I don't
And
think
that's
it's the
where-
same for China.
yeah, right, and I'm sure it's almost the same from China. And that's why it's not the same, if you look at Latin America, completely different. I mean, there are
Right.
tour consolidators and
Right.
there are a ton of them here in Queens. But I think it's based on region in terms of who's more reliant. But that's why I brought up the JTB example, because most of the leisure traffic that goes to, like, that starts from Japan over anywhere in the States, most of it goes through tour consolidators still.
Christine, we're just joined by Kenneth Adams.
Hello. Welcome.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We're
Don't
very
just
happy
pretend
to
I'm not
have
here.
you.
How was your commute?
We're going to
Sneaking in.
pretend that you're not here.
That's okay.
Did you commute from Brooklyn or from Albany?
From Brooklyn.
Okay, that's all right. We don't judge.
Did you walk here? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I thought it. Yeah, said it.
It wasn't a commuting story. It was a story of a meeting I had this morning where the people couldn't get there on time because of their commute,
Okay, yeah, I had a
which
similar thing.
set me back pyramid, or domino style, where everything seemed to be going well until they couldn't make the meeting and I had to wait for them.
Well, we're happy to have you.
I apologize.
So those on the phone, we're joined by Ken Adams, and what we're doing now is going through the committee reports. So we're up to the hospitality, we're the second one, aviation and transportation, which we were just, I think, concluding, and unless, it's a big committee. I think just to, we need to have a little bit more of a direction on that committee, and I think from a staff perspective, we should probably meet after this or later, sometime this week, and really maybe have some set goals.
Yeah.
Because transportation it could be all encompassing, and I think, it just needs a little bit more direction.
Yeah, a little bit more direction, and I think we have to understand what we have to begin with, because I think each region is going to have very different gaps,
Sure.
and we need to address each region as its own separate destination, so we need to address it accordingly.
Right. I was in Canada, in Montreal this weekend, and we certainly, with the money exchange, I'm afraid we're going to lose a lot of Canadian tourists this summer. But we need to keep and up that and keep them coming because they come by car. But the Chinese visitor to New York City or the other Asian visitors, the only way we're going to get them into the Adirondacks, which I think they would love, is probably by bus trips. So it's something we need to try to focus on, I think. And if the governor does a trade mission or something to China, we ought to make sure that tourism is included in that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we see it in our industry as well. The dollar strength is going to really impact international tourism across the board here for the next, for as long as it lasts. And then obviously what you see going on in Tokyo, I mean, the yen is not in good shape either. So from that perspective, I mean, China is to Alexandra's point, China's
Just
a
two quick
really
points. I
big
mean,
focus point.
one, don't forget that we opened our office in China last June, and so we're in 3 cities in China, actually 4 cities in China now.
Which ones?
Chengdu, Beijing, Shanghai, and
Guangzhou.
Good. So those are the 4 cities where we have, and we're actually doing an Asia mission in March. Where
We
we're
should
taking
chat about this.
Probably 15 or 16 different partners with us on a 3-city tour where we're doing a meet and greet to follow on from last year's China Ready workshops and the tour operators we brought over last year. So there's a whole effort we can update you on. But what Gail brought up about the JOLT Act, which I mentioned on the phone when we did the call, really we should consider the fact that the visa waiver program is starting to come under fire now, primarily because of what's happening with ISIL. And it's a very sort of big discussion going on right now relative to how do we keep visa waiver and keep Homeland Security intact. Just stay tuned and certainly stay supportive because that program has been incredibly important. The visa waiver and all the things that have been done on Brand USA's level and the Travel Promotion Act is really important to us in New York State as well as just to the industry in general. Just 2 quick points.
Okay, well, thank you, Gail. Thank you, Ross, for that. Instead of moving on to the sports committee, I wanted to just give Kenneth Adams the chance to address us and also to thank him for his wonderful leadership and support, which we did when we were introducing Howard. So I hope your ears were ringing and buzzing and you felt the warm love from the TAC. We will we'll miss you, but our goal is to bring in more visitors so you'll have more money to play with in your tax kingdom there.
Oh, don't put it that way, Christine.
So
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. And thanks, everybody. And I apologize. Lisa put me in the agenda as your number 2 item for an update I wasn't around to give. And I won't take too much time now, but I'm glad I've been able to join you. And Senator, good morning. Thank you for all over the past 4 years in this role. Folks should know that Senator Little hasn't just been a friend and an advisor to me on matters related to tourism, but really on all matters related to North Country economic development. And I obviously look forward to continuing to work with her in my new capacity, but it's great that she's joined us for the meeting today. So good morning, Senator.
Well, thank you. I think there's a new Adirondack adventure coming up this winter, so stay tuned.
Yeah, I have a feeling I may see you there.
Good.
Let me just a couple quick things. You've met Howard, right, who came by this morning. I was supposed to introduce Howard, but I'm sure Christine and others have done that. He is now down the hall with our ESD leadership team, our senior staff here, as he gets to know people. We have sort of we're in the second of a 3-week transition. I'm here for another couple of weeks, this week and next, and then right after the President's Day holiday, I'll start as the new Commissioner of Tax and Finance, and Howard will start here. That's the 17th of February. Bear in mind, Christine and others, that I won't be far away. Tax and Finance is very much a sister agency to ESD. So many of the economic development programs and incentives that ESD packages and negotiates with companies actually run through Tax and Finance from an administrative basis. If you think about the film production tax credit or Excelsior or Empire Zones, all of the programs run through tax. And I think we won't discuss them today, but I'll say this now, and I know it will be shared with others, Christine, that when I do settle into the new role, I'll want to talk to the representatives of the hospitality industry and tourism industry and certainly transportation about your specific tax issues and what can I do in my new role as your new advocate within Tax and Finance on tax-related issues. So again, not a subject for today, but I want to make it clear that as I move over there, and please give me a little time to figure out the place, but I look forward to continuing these discussions around with a focus on, again, tax-related issues and how tax policy affects, in good and bad ways, tourism investment in the state on the infrastructure side, and then all the things we care about in terms of bringing more and more visitors all across the state.
Can I just interrupt one thing? How about no sales tax on the energy used to make snow? We've worked on that for years.
Oh, one of my favorites.
I know. Having you there.
You're remembering that Gavin and Christine had me go to the Ski Association of New York annual meeting at Hunter Mountain back in September. Oh, and didn't that issue come up but a few times? And they didn't even know. Of course, I didn't know I'd be getting this new job at that time. But,
right.
But I'm pretty sure we'll have a chance to look into that.
Oh, good.
There are, for folks not familiar with this, most of you probably are, there is a view, quite understandably, that snowmaking at ski resorts is a form of manufacturing. And if that's the case, then the equipment, which is incredibly expensive, could be eligible for certain investment tax credits because of the purchasing of that machinery, or the energy component, as the senator points out, which is normally ski resorts, if you're part of saying you know this, pay a commercial rate for their electric usage. But when they're making snow, they would argue they're making something that enables their resort to function, and they should pay an industrial rate, a lower rate. I think, Senator, that would be your point there.
Absolutely.
And, oh, yes, this is, for someone who spent, how many years as a lobbyist for the business community fighting high taxes in New York, I have an interesting assignment.
That is good.
The governor.
Glad you're there.
The governor, I said, good, stop complaining and go over there. So that will happen on the 17th, and in due course, we'll have these conversations. I wanted to just quickly reflect on something I told Howard. This is a very specific thing with respect to the winter campaign. I get on the subway, and apologies to those of you on the phone, but I get on the subway on Friday after leaving the office here, and the first thing I see is one of the new fall campaign posters, Gavin. It's the one that says something like, it's the Darwin Martin House. It's that one, right? They're right on. The folks who are on the phone, they're displayed beautifully on the wall here in our conference room. But it's the one about the Darwin Martin House, which is a wonderful, wonderful Frank Lloyd Wright, really very, very, very special place, and really perfectly restored house plus museum plus celebration of Frank Lloyd Wright's work in Buffalo. And so I saw that poster, and then over the weekend emailed Howard Zemsky, obviously great Buffalonian and friend, because the connections are so. This campaign that picks very specific destinations, as opposed to what we often do, which is, ski in the Catskills. It's good, it's important, but this is much, in a way, it's kind of bold and focused because it names specific locations. And it's out and about. I hope all of you have seen it. My family and I did go for a trip during the holidays, came back to Kennedy, and the wraps of every imaginable square inch of available sheetrock. Gavin, I used to talk about this. I didn't believe it till I saw it. The columns, the walls, the surfaces. It is the I Love New York winter campaign out there. It's overwhelming. And this was an IAT. This was Terminal 4. Overwhelming, and it creates the most for folks on the phone, and to the senator's point. It creates this most overwhelming impression that when you arrive in New York City, you look up and you see these great destinations all over the state, i.e. you may be actually technically in Queens, but you've arrived in New York City and you immediately get the sense that there's so much more, as the campaign suggests, all around the state. And if you play that out on the LIR Metro North posters and in the subway system, MTA, and all the delays caused by bad weather, which forces people to read all the posters in the trains, it's just phenomenal. So I'm really excited by that campaign. And hats off to Gavin, to Rich, the team that have made it work. And the last thing, and she's up next, is, and I'm sticking around for this, when you're ready, Christine, Anna Packman's work on the app, which I had the pleasure of Anna showing me a couple days before it went live, or around the day that it went live, on her phone. And it's the greatest thing, because here's where we get away from print and use digital technology and communication to really just, again, it's like the wrapping concept. Like we wrap physically space like an airport. This is a digital wrap around just tourism activities in the state, and it's fantastic. So congratulations, Anna. Having said that, again, I won't be far away. I'll always be a champion for all things related to travel and tourism in the state, even in my new role, and as much as the governor, assuming he continues to deploy me to do presentations and things like that, you all and the work of the TAC will be a big part of that. So to be continued, and I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. And Christine, by the way, thank you again for all of your great work.
Well, thank you.
Our fearless leader.
So before I know you're going to stick around, we do have to get through one more subcommittee, but before I do that, I just want to thank Kenneth. But I know you're a very quick study. So you start on the 17th. On the 18th, you can expect a call about this. So I'm going to give you a heads up, because we're not in the meeting earlier. There was a nice, robust discussion about the need for broadband up in the North Country, because what the Hospitality Infrastructure Committee focused on so much is development of higher-end hotels, or any hotels for that matter, that you'd want to stay in. I know Tom Mulroy wants the very highest and best. So we started talking about investment opportunities, and really, it's almost putting the cart before the horse. Before any developer is going to want to invest, they want the broadband. The governor mentioned it in the State of the State. We spoke about it with Senator Little, and this was a very good suggestion from Eleanor Tatum about using it, using public safety as really the hook, instead of possibly economic, but since there's been some pretty sensational cases of people being found who have been stranded, because of the technology. But if you're in between exit 31 and 32 and that technology doesn't exist, it should be a public safety issue. So, and then one of the issues that that the governor mentioned was the $500 million investment from the state, which would be matched by the carriers. So perhaps there's a way that you can think of from a taxation point of view that could give incentive to the carriers to try and reach that investment. That's something we would love your input on and, your wise counsel.
Two very quick things. I know you have more on the agenda, Christine, but several years ago, the state's broadband initiative was actually out in a different state agency devoted to technology, and the governor grabbed it and merged it into ESD. So you might want to have Dave Solway, who's the head of the state broadband program and now an ESD employee, attend a TAC meeting, because he could answer that question much better than I could. And up till this point, Dave himself and Angela, his assistant, have deployed over $30 million in matching grants to carriers as incentives to do last mile, high speed, 100 megabytes per second or more broadband deployment in remote, rural, and frankly, sometimes inner city parts of the state. You'd be if you saw Dave has the most sophisticated mapping of broadband capacity for every kind of block and lot in the whole state. Is incredible. It starts with knowing where the problems are, and indeed in New York City, particularly in public housing and other poor neighborhoods, there is, people still have really insufficient broadband for a whole host of reasons. So it's not just a rural thing. But the point is, that's an ESD program. That's $500 million in the budget. It is teed up as a minimum one-to-one match with carriers. And to your point, Christine, it's teed up as money that would work as an incentive to help carriers drive broadband capacity to areas where it's kind of uneconomic, because there's just not customer density or subscriber density. But the point is to get high-speed broadband, like really, and so you're absolutely right that is, without that there is no, it's very hard to have serious tourism infrastructure on a whole host of things, not just hotels. But bring Dave in, and yes, you're right, and that's the governor's, that's his goal through this commitment. That's frankly $500 million out of the $5.4 billion of the settlement funds. So, the $1.5 billion for upstate there's an upstate revitalization competition going on, but $500 million is one of the biggest single allocations of the settlement funds, and it is for high-speed broadband deployment to reach, to Eleanor's point, and to serve the state in that way. By extension, there's two other budget items folks should feel, and the TAC should feel really good about and think about, and again, maybe for future meetings, far be it from me, but a group of us working with Ag and Markets this fall, here at ESD, and we do a lot with Ag and Markets, as you all know, pushed really hard, and the governor said yes, okay, to making a major new investment in State Fair, Jamin Clemente's favorite activity. Because Jamin was just tired of State Fair, that building, and that booth, and same old, no offense to anybody here, but same old for so many years, to what is an incredible, iconic event that has desperately needed, I'll just say this, a shot in the arm. And to that end, the governor's allocated, I think, $25 million. I mean, it's a major, right? And the idea is to do a plan. Won't be in place for this year, but to really rethink State Fair, to look at the facilities, to look at the new Onondaga County amphitheater that's being built along the lake, to look at connections to downtown Syracuse, to look at the physical plant, to programming, what type of functions could be year-round. Some of this was triggered by my own experiences at Texas State Fair this year, which is the state fair, probably one of the greatest in the country, and looking at how it can be done right, and then bringing back those experiences and sharing them with Pat Hooker. So I would, again, urge the TAC to think about this, because Ag and Markets and ESD together can work on this, and the governor has set the bar. He said, okay, fine, but now he sort of set the bar really high. Like, we can't, and there's huge opportunities for tourism and marketing Ken, it's a destination event. It's everything. So you got State Fair and the $25 million for I Love New York advertising, Gavin, that Gavin received as well. So, and you already know about that. But there is a lot in the governor's $142 billion budget for tourism and marketing and travel and things that will connect to the activities of the TAC.
Great.
I'm kind of out there on his, I do these presentations with his PowerPoint all around, and so we have some really nice slides in that, by the way, of the tourism investments the governor proposes to make. None of this happens, of course, till our colleagues, our friends in the Senate and the Assembly finish their hearings and negotiate the budget, but these proposals are very important.
Terrific. We will definitely, anything you ask us to look into, we will do so, because you're a trusted advisor and supporter. In fact, I think we're going to move quickly through this, the last subcommittee report. Ross, if there's anything you want to intro on that.
Yeah, sure. This is the Sports and Special Events Committee, which is taking a look at how New York State can help support attracting high-level sporting and other events in various venues across New York State, and whether that's putting together a list of events to be approached and other ways that we could support. And the committee met under the leadership of Thurman Thomas, who is doing Super Bowl-related travel today and so couldn't be with us. But in his stead, Christine, who also joined that meeting, is able to give that report. So, Christine.
Right, and also in attendance on that meeting was Ilana Petroselli, Irene Baker, John Mariacker, who works with Thurman Thomas, and Assemblywoman Markey. And I will just say, while Ken is here, I mean, the reason why I became chairman of TAC, will give you all the secret. Not that, I came to meet with Kenneth because I had an idea. So here I was in the private sector leaving NYC and Company, and I had an idea that this New York State should have a sports commission, right? So Kenneth thought that was an interesting idea, and he said, well, we also have a tourism advisory council, maybe you want to do that. And I said, as long as it gets us to the sports commission. So here I am. So my motive here. And that was one of the things that we discussed, how we should sort of move forward with this committee. So one of the first things we did was we joined, I Love New York has joined the National Association of Sports Commissioners. Ken Wong is the point person for all things sports related and events from a staff perspective. So we're going to be evaluating as a committee, how do we actually make that work? Should we be going to trade shows? So before we just jump into this, we want to make sure that there's going to be a return on our investment. And if Thurman is going to be traveling around the country, the state and the country, which we would like, because we think he's a terrific ambassador for sports, what do we want to gain from that? Obviously, we want sporting events to come to New York State. We think we have the venues, the diversity, all the great things that make our state better than others for hosting sporting events and also large-scale events. So that's what we will be focusing on. We've also asked Thurman and others in the committee, and you're all invited to help us with this. Just as we've had some great success with the advertising campaign that is featuring well-known individuals, we would like to do the same with our so-called sports committee, so that if there are other individuals that are living in New York or have a New York connection, that if they show up at a meeting, when Thurman Thomas shows up at a meeting that has to do with football, all of a sudden everybody listens. If, let's just use as an example, Sarah Hughes shows up at a meeting, who's a Long Islander, that has something to do with figure skating and trying to bring some figure skating competitions in, people listen. So that's the type of folks that we're looking for. If you have any suggestions or any connections with anyone, please let us know, because we certainly could use your help on that. So those of you from the committee, if there's anything that...
Is Irene on the line, or...?
Irene, yes, she is.
Okay.
She was.
I am.
Yes. Anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. I think we still have some work to do on the sports side. So, looking forward to having some follow-up meetings.
Terrific.
This is Ross. The one thing I'll just quickly add is we also recognize that there's a lot of local work that's already going on, and part of our job is going to be connecting with those folks, both local sports commissions, TPAs, see what they're doing, see what they need from New York State, what we could do to help their bids, including the things Christine talked about. So that's an important aspect as well, that it's not just New York State looking at what we can do, but how that can complement and add to what's already being done on different levels.
Christine, at the risk of suggesting an assignment for my friend and our incoming president and CEO Howard, let's remember with his many roles in Buffalo, he's got some good connections to the Buffalo Bills. And ESD in the state, as everybody knows, over the last few years under the governor's leadership and a lot of help from Howard Glazer, did the lease negotiation and has a lot of work to keep the team in Western New York, obviously. And with its with its purchase by the new owners, there's there are a number of things that are kind of stabilized, and it strikes me that there's an opportunity now, especially with Howard, if you want to talk to him about, what can I Love New York do? What's the, with the Buffalo Bills? For the first term, that was just an unstable, volatile, really tricky situation. But it's settled with the Pagula's purchase of the team in a very, very good way. And Howard knows all of those people really well, and that might be something he could help you all pursue. The other thing I'd note, just really quickly, for Ken or someone, is that one of the biggest events this group worked on, and we all worked on at ESD, was the PGA Championship 2 years ago. And to be fair, so much of the state's really historic support for that event and its success came from Larry Schwartz, who was very, very supportive of all the things we wanted to do and was very active in negotiating a lot of the tricky parts of that with the PGA leadership. Larry's leaving, or is the process of leaving the administration, so we'll need to get a new, if you will, kind of champion in the chamber for some of these big events. I mean, Larry just was really so you've got some of these key people associated with key events. I think Howard can be really helpful with the Bills.
Right.
We'll need to find someone. The PGA relationship's in place. It's a really great relationship, but Larry's stepping aside, so we got to just keep moving forward with that.
And Andrew Kennedy's been pretty good.
He's the best.
Andrew
He is unbelievable. He is such a force. What are we not getting? I'm trying to understand. Obviously, we get Massive and Irene in the Garden, okay? Small doesn't need our... What do we want that we don't have? What size? Please.
Are we focusing on colleges as well? Because, that's the thing, when you look, and this is a random fact, and sometimes they just come out, but when you look, for example, at Syracuse University, you look at, aside from just the local university itself in San Juan, Puerto Rico, the next top university that people go to from Puerto Rico is Syracuse. So when I know it's random, but when you take a look at what the university sports have to offer, and people travel to either go see their kids or people travel to go, to go attend. I didn't know if you were including university sports in here or not.
We are, and that's one of the things that the committee is going to be focused on, is what are we
trying to get?
What is our market? Right. Also, amateur sports, which Larry Schwartz had, mentioned to me, was a big, we should be looking at. We're not going to do what Pennsylvania does for Little League, but there are all sorts of baseball, lacrosse, hockey, crew. Syracuse, you mentioned Syracuse, they have the largest regatta for high school crew, which, when you look at the schools, the high schools that have crew teams, they tend to be pretty high net worth areas. So you want those kids from all over the country coming to Syracuse, because it's going to be helping put New York's best foot forward, spending money, staying. So, that I didn't even know before I got this job. And I was a rower. So, and I didn't really know that, because I didn't row in high school, I rowed in college. But, huge opportunity for New York State if they just got a little bit of love to keep that here, because other states are trying to take that away. So that's just one example.
Just as a side of that, I know Gavin and Christine mentioned New York State joined the National Association of Sports Commission. Part of that is also a lot of these trade associations will maintain RFPs of databases. So it's not just what's out there; it's who's actively looking for venues that host their events. So that's part of why we've been doing that, just kind of compiling that information and figure out what's out there, what we can grab from either other states or in general. So
I'm getting emails now from governing bodies. I just got one from weightlifting. I don't know anything about weightlifting, but apparently this is a big deal, and now they are shopping for a venue.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily happen.
Do we have a list of any of these events that that attract. I was in Lake Placid 2 weekends ago, and they had 2,000 to 3,000 synchronized figure skaters and their families. And the place, they get this tournament this competition every 3 years. But we have to keep all that stuff here, as well as all the World Cup things that they have at their venues.
Yeah, Christine, I wanted to mention, you talked about the Little League Baseball, and you referenced Pennsylvania, and I'm assuming what you were talking about was a Little League World Series. But a couple of things, and actually Thurman and I had talked about this over the last couple of weeks. There is an enormous amount of people that go to Cooperstown in the summer for baseball tournaments. I don't know if anybody on the committee is familiar with what goes on there.
We know. Yes.
Yeah.
That's why we did the ad. We did the ad about Cooperstown, but we certainly could do more.
Yeah, well, and I don't know what the numbers are compared to the Little League World Series, but I know that there's a tremendous amount of people that go there from all over the place. I mean, it's not just New York State, but Thurman's son actually played on 2 different teams, one in Florida and one here in Buffalo, and he went twice. But there's some entrepreneurs here in Western New York that are trying to do a similar thing with Little League baseball teams and softball teams in the Buffalo and Erie County, Niagara County region. So there's a huge opportunity there. And on the same thought process that you're talking about with synchronized swimming and weightlifting, Thurman and I, and myself even probably more personally than Thurman, are really involved with youth sports. And the way sports are now, there are huge events for every sport you can imagine year-round, whether it's wrestling, synchronized swimming, judo, sailing, you name it, volleyball, and there's events out there to be, to be pursued. So when we talked in the first, it was maybe our second call we had, it's just a matter of putting, I guess, a game plan together, and and Thurman, obviously, when we discussed this in the subcommittee, he is, more than willing to, if we can locate and identify some of these things we want to go after, to lend his presence to and try to land some of these things. And I also mentioned, it was in the notes, I don't know if everybody got the notes, that in our business dealings, we've had success on going to these conventions and helping some of our business partners, get new vendors and get new contracts, just by going to these events and helping them pitch their promotion and their product. So I can't imagine that it would be much different going after, what we're trying to go after here. So I just want to throw that out there.
Well, John, that's very helpful, and the fact that you guys are really on the ground and you understand it, this is why we really appreciate your input on the committee. So I'm going to move us along a little bit because apparently this meeting room that we're in is spoken for at 1 o'clock. So,
okay.
And I want to make sure Anna has a chance to go over the app, and we might need to talk a little bit later. Maybe we can put your report, Melanie, about PR, because we want to we want to congratulate Finn Partners for being selected again as our PR firm for I Love New York. So we're very excited to have you on again.
Thank you.
It's a testament to your terrific work. So maybe at the next TAC meeting, we can learn a little bit about what your goals are for the coming year.
Perfect.
All right, terrific. So Anna, it's all yours.
Thanks, Christine. We're all New Yorkers, so I'll speak really fast. First, I want to acknowledge Ben Gutman is a partner at Digital Natives. They are the group that built the app for us and have been incredible partners to work with throughout this whole process. It's been a little over a week and a half since we did our big public release and unveiled the app at the New York Times Travel Show. So I just want to start off with some results. As of Friday, we were at over 5,000 downloads, and we are the top destination app if you discount Disney and Universal Studios apps in the world out of any of the states, any cities. Vegas, which is second to us so far in the iTunes rankings, is about 100 spots behind. So we're feeling pretty good about that. We also, just in terms of feedback from consumers, We have 36 ratings in the iTunes store. Average rating 4.5 stars out of 5. So it's a great product. It's available for iPhone and Android. We're coming out with an iPad and tablet version soon, and encourage everyone to check it out in more detail after we're done here. So on the screen we have the app, and the way it works and the way we really built this is we wanted to give full control, full power to the user to really be able to quickly find what they're looking for in New York based on what they love. So here you see we're in the office, so right by us we have a few hotels, they're just down the street, and we have Grand Central Terminal. And this, by the way, is all fed through the thousands of listings the TPAs have been entering on our website. So if it's in the I Love New York database, it's going to show up here. So I'm going to tap on Grand Central. And here you see basically what we call a listings page. So you see a photo of it, you see a description, you see a Google map. If I were to click here, it would actually open Google Maps on my phone and help me get directions to go there. We have the phone number, we have the link to their website. And then we have, let's say we're hungry, we can click on food and drink nearby. And find places to eat right around Grand Central itself. So let's say we want to go to Cafe Centro, and let's say we want to share that with our friends on Twitter.
Wow. Is it hooked up to Open Table so you can make a reservation too, or?
No, but great idea.
Okay, all right.
Duly noted. So another great feature of the app is, because we really designed it to be your best friend while you're on the road, so it's always going to have different content based on where you are. If you walk even a block away from here, you're going to have a completely different home screen experience. But let's say we want to go up to the Adirondacks. It's very easy to change your location, so all I did was tap on New York City. I'm going to tap on the Adirondacks, and here we are. Completely new content based on that region. So here we have a little bit of a menu. I'm going to go to the attractions, and let's say I'm just interested in nature because the Adirondacks are beautiful, and I can filter down based on that, so I only see nature listings. So here, similarly, if we go to the Feeder Canal Towpath Trail, and going back to the broadband conversation, we know that if we're actually in the Adirondacks, we might not have a connection there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this little heart. What that does is it adds it to my favorites. And if I go to the menu and I click on the favorites, it's right here. And anything that's in the favorites list gets cached on your phone, so it's saved for offline use. And that way, when you are actually in those places where we have no reception, you can still find that content that you had saved for yourself. I'm going to show you another cool feature that we built. I'm going to tap this little bell here. And this is what we call the concierge. So let's say you don't know exactly where you want to go. It helps you find itineraries, curated trip ideas that we've put together and that we've put here, and there's representation for all 11 regions. There's about 5 to 6 per region to start, and we're adding more as we go. So let's say we want to do arts and culture within 25 miles, and we want to go in the summer. So this is a list based on, it's also location based, so it's showing New York City first because we're in New York City. If we were upstate, it would show upstate adventures first. And which one should we
I think unique museums.
Okay, so let's go to Unique Museums, New York City. Sorry, broadband. So here you see a description for the adventure. New York City boasts incredible diversity, so it's not surprising that it's host to some of the most unique museums in the world, and a list of the museums that are a part of this adventure. So what we'll do is we'll swipe to the right. There's a little bit more information about what makes some of these places so unique and interesting. And then we get into individual museum listing cards. So these are listings we saw before. So as you go through, you get information about them. And we also, in some of these adventures, have things like, I'm just going to quickly scroll through. So you've gone to a lot of museums. You're probably pretty hungry. Then we curate a neighborhood and say, you're near the Lower East Side. Why don't you grab some lunch? And here are the places in our database that are the closest to the Lower East Side. And so forth. I'll also show you the events feature. So we have a full events calendar built into here. By the way, it's just in the office. Outside the office is perfect.
Yeah, don't worry, it always happens, right?
When we were building this, I was literally sitting in my office on the phone with Ben, like, just give me another half an hour.
So maybe part of the 500 million the governor's going to do.
How's that
might
tell
be
you?
something here.
It's not just for rural areas.
It's really good.
Thank you.
Lady skiing.
So.
A sloth wearing an astronaut suit?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that one of your favorites, Ben?
Well, one of my partners sent that to me, so I've had that on my wallpaper forever.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like this is hanging up here at the moment. But
I have ladies skiing, the big quiz up. Like, there's lots of stuff.
So yours is getting it,
They work.
right? Okay.
Make it work.
Technical,
there you go.
technical difficulty.
Yeah, so it's good.
But I mean, you know, that's basically the app's functionality in a nutshell. Oh yeah, so you can see it here. So yes, they also show up in this view, and they can be viewed. And you could. The cool thing about events is, oh, there we go. New York City Beer Week. We're very excited about that.
Everybody is.
Yeah. You can add it to your calendar, so your device's calendar. You can save it right there. So that way, even when you're not using the app, and let's say you've saved an event that's about a month away, you remember that's something that you wanted to go to.
Now, fill us in a little bit about how you input these things, because how big is the I Love New York database? And there are so many restaurants in New York City. How do they participate?
Yeah, there are literally thousands. We work with the TPAs in each region, and they're the ones who are really going in for the most part and filling it in. It's also it's an open system, so any business in the state can go and update their own listing if they want to. They can sign up for an account and make those updates. Same with chambers of commerce. But it's mainly the responsibility of the TPAs. Mm-hmm. And so New York City in particular, we have a relationship with New York City & Co. Where we get a data feed from them. Mm-hmm. So anything that's on their website goes into that feed and gets fed to our site and therefore the app.
Okay, so Restaurant Week, which is coming up February 16th, would be on there?
The restaurants would be. Restaurant Week, if they put it in as an event, then yes, it would go through. Mm-hmm. It would be that events feed.
So walk me through how I would find out if I'm looking at events. Mm-hmm. And if I know I know Restaurant Week sometime in February, how do I punch in Restaurant Week?
So you could also do a search. So you have the search functionality here. You can do it by keyword, city, region.
Okay.
So if we search for... Oh, there we go. For some reason it's pulling in summer, but we'll take a look at that, Christine.
Okay.
But technically what it takes is for New York City & Company to put it in the feed.
Yeah.
And then it uploads into the app.
Mm-hmm. So all the TPAs know about this? They've all been briefed on it, or?
Yeah, we've done calls with the major attractions community, the TPA community, all of our industry, sort of, the Sanies of the world, the Tonys of the world, any trade association you can think of, NISHDA, in order to encourage them to not only know about the app, but also to encourage data. Because it is, being honest, we do have some gaps in our data that we're trying to correct. Yeah. Because depending on how active the TPA is or not, then we, obviously reflects, on the feeds that we're getting back. So we're working with them on a daily basis, and Anna has made it a priority for the TPAs to make sure that photos are included in the list. So it's all been actually going on. We're delighted with the outcome.
Well, we think it's great. So everybody has an assignment here. You must sign up for the app. Okay, we're going to test you next. So we want it to be 5,025 or 5,040, however we had on the phone.
It's downloaded.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Does NYC & Company have an app? It has an app, right?
They don't.
Mm-hmm. They don't?
No.
So we have an app and they don't have an app? Woohoo! Look Finally, we're leading the charge. I love it. Okay. So for now, we have an app and they don't.
Yeah,
So.
next week.
And Vegas has an app and they're only at 5,000 and.
Well, it's not downloads, it's ranking, so it's based on how many people in the last. I don't know how they calculate it. Is it a week or so?
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a mystery. So it's kind of it's a decaying factor. So it's whatever's popular.
So let's make sure that I Love New York is always popular. Okay. All right, George, you just downloaded George? Okay,
We're going up as I'm looking at it.
you get a gold star. All right, thank you all, and we will see you next time. Appreciate it. Oh, I am adjourning. I have to do my Robert's rules, and it is now 12:50.